Welcome back, everybody. Episode 12, I think, of the podcast series. So when last we spoke to you, we had just arrived in Sydney, and after a week or 10 or 11 days of travelling across the Nullarbor and South Australia, Victoria and New South Wales, and we were there for Christmas. So we arrived a couple of days early. One of our kids had flown over, and we met him at the airport the following day after we arrived in Sydney. And things were travelling along reasonably well. We had a nice Christmas, as you do with family, and then our child went home as well. We only had one of them come over, the younger one, and because the older one was going and doing some concerts and some functions and parties and stuff. And then a couple of days moved along, and we got a phone call, a disturbing phone call from Perth, and we had a bit of an issue, and our eldest had a bit of a drama, and so it happened that came to pass that we decided that it was best for Michelle to head home. So Michelle headed home for what was going to be a few days. It was really an unsure period of time how long she was going to be heading home for, but she went home for a few days. And what I started to do was think about the possibly generating the EO Topo 2024 map set. So it takes a good couple of weeks to do the processing of the data and bits and pieces. Obviously, we collect data and we do work all throughout the year, but it does take a good couple of weeks to sit down and actually put it together and run all the processes and programs and do the road conflation and data integration and the bits and pieces that make one of our map sets. So I thought I'd have a look at starting to do that, because we hadn't really come up with a schedule of when we were going to release the 2024, or even whether we were going to release the 2024. We weren't really sure. We had come off years and years of doing biannually releases, and then it was just this time that we decided we should do we're starting to move down the fact of doing 1 to 2 releases a year. So it was a good time to start. If Michelle was away, for a week or so, I could at least get a start and see what we're up to. And as it actually happened, Michelle was gone for 15 days before she came back, and so during that 15 days, I did manage to do the whole EO Topo 2024 update map set. As we said in the video, in the podcast before, we were trying to incorporate a lot of road updates in northern Queensland and stuff. We obviously couldn't get there. We just didn't have the time. And when we discussed how we came across the bottom and just shot across the Nullarbor again, there wasn't a huge amount of updates that we needed to do through there. However, we did do a fair few, found a few new roads and bits and pieces, as we always do. So all of those sorts of things were rolled up into that update. Obviously, I was updating all of the main data. So one of the jobs is to go and collect, native title register and ABS data and various bits and pieces. There's data that's collected from all over the place that goes into the base map data that builds up the EO Topo map set, along with all of our data that we've been collecting and keeping for years. And within that 2-week period, just so happened that luckily the day Michelle flew back was the day that I released the web app the app update that was going to include the 2024 release product. We had a few dramas for the next few days, as we always do after an app and a map update. But really that kind of all went through fairly seamlessly. Obviously during this time, we were planning to be in Tasmania, so we had to adjust our Spirit of Tasmania bookings. We were planning to come down to Tasmania. What was the date we were originally
15th.
On the 15th?
Mm.
Yeah. And so, obviously with Michelle flying out, what day did you fly out? About 27th, 28th or something? I can't remember. It was it was a few days after Christmas. And then...
No, so we actually got the phone call on the 1st of January.
Oh, it was 1st of January.
So the year started off
yeah,
pretty poorly. And it was around, and I was on the phone to the hospital for a couple of days. And then when I realised I had to go, that was the 4th.
Right.
So I flew over on the 4th.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you for fixing my dates.
Mm.
I'm not a good date collector, nor am I a good name rememberer, nor am I a great place name rememberer. But anyway, so yeah, Michelle headed over on the 4th, and as I say, I was gone for 16 days. So that meant you came back on the 20th. So obviously we were going to miss our sailing date our original sailing date for Spirit of Tasmania. So we were a bit concerned about being able to shift that booking, and we spent a bit of time stuffing around with it. We rang and we spoke to them, and they seemed to be able to find dates no problem. They told us that we could save on the cancellation fee or the transfer fee if we did it online ourselves, and then Michelle was able to work it out, and we were able to pick a couple of new dates back and forth, between us as to the best dates to come over.
The key was to try and still keep a 6-week trip here in Tasmania. So that's what I was aiming towards. And originally I wanted to make sure that we still did get some summer while we're in Tasmania, because the original trip was to arrive here early January and to leave in early March. And part of that trip plan was to give us a couple of weeks to actually drive between Sydney and Geelong and explore that section. So by adjusting our dates, we were really able to cut out a long tour between Sydney and Victoria, and we cut that down to 3 very short days. So we made up some time there and still managed to get our booking to Tasmania on the 27th of January. Yeah. So that's how we've had to adjust that. And look, the mainland can wait. We can always come back. But Tasmania, it's quite expensive to come here when you're towing. You've got 2 vehicles, your height, your length, your measurements, all part of the booking availability. So one of the keys with your booking of Spirit of Tasmania is if you can stay under the 2 or at the 2.1 height or under, much more spots are available, and we are able to do that with our Land Cruiser. We don't have much on the roof rack. We do have the roof rack, and we have 2 small bags that have the stand-up paddle boards on it, and the Max Tracks, and a couple of other little bits and pieces.
The stand-ups are on the Ultimate.
And on the camper trailer, the Ultimate connected to the vehicle is under 10 metres, and so for every full metre
we just have to take the bikes off.
There's a different price range and availability. So staying under 10 metres, under 2.1 height, we had no problem in adjusting our bookings and in getting the booking in the first place. I only booked that about a month before we left, so in December. I booked it in November. So a lot of people aren't clear on that one. I know that means full-size caravans, which a lot of people have. It's a lot harder. So yeah, booking out a lot earlier. But I think once you've got a booking, it's not too hard to change your dates. They have a policy of a 3-hour time change. By that I mean you can actually change and amend your booking from 3 hours before departure, which is incredible. But what that means is there's changes all the time coming up in the booking system. So you just need to keep looking. If you look one day and it looks like there's no availability, just look the next day, because people are changing their bookings so frequently.
Yeah. So that all happened while I was staying at the in-laws' house, and that was good to be able to get those adjustments made to the booking. It took a bit of pressure off, and we could still maintain the 6 weeks. And yeah, as Michelle just explained, I think even though now we're out, we are actually shooting this from Tasmania. Now that we're actually here, I'm fairly comfortable or confident that if we decide to stay a bit longer, that won't necessarily be a problem. We should be able to shift that as well. So yeah, she's happy about that. We'll just have to see. It's pretty nice down here. But back to Sydney, because we hadn't actually left yet, and then obviously, so Michelle had come back. We just released the 2024 product map set. We've had to do some shopping, as you do, spending lots at the shops. How on earth you can spend $300 or $400 or $500 loading up groceries into a car and a camper trailer is beyond me, but we seem to be able to do it quite easily, and we can sort of pack a lot of stuff in. And then then we had to obviously get ourselves to Geelong, and our original plan, and as you've heard from us before, planning is a thing that happens on the fly most of the time. But our original planning, again, which changed every time we do make a plan, it does seem to change, was to spend about a week and a bit travelling between Sydney and Geelong, just touring around in the high country, some parts of the Alpine. We wanted to do, down through Wollongong and Helensburgh and some of those, the sea cliffs, the Sea Cliff Bridge and things like that on the way down. And we thought, can we condense this and still get down with doing something a bit better than just touring down the Hume Highway in 2 or 3 days. So
No
we
one wants
decided
to go down the Hume
no one wants to
Highway.
go down the Hume Highway if you can avoid it, unless you have to, unless you're in a hurry. And whilst we were still in a bit of a hurry, what we pulled out on the Friday from your folks' house, no, the
No
Thursday,
idea.
with a sailing date of Saturday night at 11 o'clock. So we had Thursday, Friday, and Saturday to get to the boat. We had sort of 3 nights, or 2 nights, 3 nights, and we had to be there. So we decided that we'd still have a crack at going down the Sea Cliffs and Wollongong Way, and going through the state forest. What was it? The Royal National Park.
The Royal National Park first.
The Royal National Park first. Yeah.
Which
So
I can't believe I grew up in Sydney for 30 years and I never actually went there.
oh, actually, talking about growing up in Sydney and never actually going anywhere, whilst we were staying at North Turramurra, or in the Turramurra area, St Ives, with the in-laws, we went cycling and did quite a few mountain biking treks and some hiking and stuff all through the national parks and Ku-ring-gai National Park and areas up there. And it's such a lovely place. If you do live in Sydney and you're anywhere near the northern beaches, there's some really nice mountain biking and trekking and stuff in that area. You don't have to go very far. And, having lived in Sydney all my life, or originally, before we moved to Perth, of course.
Life before kids.
Life before children. There's all these areas around Duffy's Forest and Terry Hills, and there's all these new walks in, to Middle Harbour from Belrose and all around the foreshore. You can actually walk from Bondi to Manly now, which is a humongous distance and a huge walk. You're not going to do that all in one day, but there are walk paths and things that have appeared around the city that didn't used to be there. There's some fantastic hiking and trekking and mountain biking still to be done. As I say, places in those areas that I'd never been. And I spent a few years living in Belrose, and then just over the hill from where I was, there was these fantastic mountain biking and walk trails that I didn't even know existed. So it's always worth having a look. And I tell you, all these walk tracks and trails are all on ExplorOz Traveller, and that's how some of them are found. So make sure you open up the app and have a look, even if you're at your local home, and you may find something that you didn't even know existed, like we have on several occasions looking at the bike tracks and walk tracks near us. So yeah, we went down to the Royal National Park first, and
and that was gorgeous drive. Just going through there, I had no idea the drive was so beautiful. The road is just fringed with massive towering trees that connect a canopy as you drive through. And then you pop out at Stanwell Tops, which, most people are aware that's a popular place for the hang gliders to go off the cliff. And there's nice views there. I can't believe it was all commercialised now, and there's a cafe, and they make it hard for you to pull over if you've got a caravan or something. But we did manage to find a spot by the road. There was a little slot for 1 or 2 people.
There's about 3 bus bays or something.
Yeah.
They're labelled bus bays, and that's where you've got to go if you're towing something. Yeah.
And I don't know if anyone's noticed, but there's a plaque to a guy who lost his life hang gliding off that cliff there. So have a look for that one. But driving through that area, the point, as David mentioned earlier, was to be able to go over the Sea Cliff Bridge. And if you're like anyone, you see these pictures on Instagram and it looks gorgeous. It does from the sky. But I don't know how people manage to get some of that footage. There must have been ages trying to set up your drone, drive across, be a good enough driver that you're not going to lose your drone over the cliff at the edge. We didn't. We just drove across. So my view of going off the Sea Cliff Bridge is just a road and a barrier. It was okay. We got the footage.
It was something that we wanted to do anyway. And going through the national park was great. And it's not a fast drive. It's not somewhere where you want to go when you're trying to get somewhere in a hurry like we were. So, whilst we say we were in a hurry, we didn't leave first thing in the morning, and we, from the in-laws, and we didn't get through Sydney in the most efficient manner.
That's what I thought you were going to talk about, growing up in Sydney. We took a wrong turn, like literally straight out of my suburb. So we didn't have the tracking on or anything, and David turns right, and I wasn't paying attention. I was probably still on my phone or something. We should have turned left.
Oh, that was the first. That was the first.
So you're going all the wrong way on difficult roads to turn around. So we just adjusted our navigation plan, and we ended up, because we're trying to get to the other side of Sydney to get onto the Royal National Park, and that wasn't the easiest place to navigate just by the seat of your pants. And so I did have the navigator telling us which way to go.
We're also avoiding the tolls.
Oh yeah, in the app you can adjust, you know, your height, your weight, your length, your measurement, but you can also say avoid tolls. So we had all that in. And in the end, David really loved the plan we came up with, because it was going through roads where he used to work, his first job in 1986 or something or other. Yep. And it had all changed. And they're roads that you wouldn't normally go on, you would avoid in Sydney as your main route if you had to. But it was, yeah, it was probably 10 o'clock in the morning, weekdays and school holidays. So road traffic was actually quite fine. It was just that we were on these narrow roads in Sydney that were once 2 lanes, that they've now squeezed in a 3rd lane without making any adjustments.
Yeah, so. We were on Parramatta Road, and we were going through Summerhill and Ashfield, and we went all the way to Camperdown, and we had a tour through Sydney that was probably completely unnecessary, driving down all the little back streets around the back of the airport to try and pop out onto the Pacific Highway, or Princess Highway it's called there, isn't it?
Yeah.
At the right spot so that we could get into the national park. Wow, what a journey with the trailer and everything else going on. It was an eye-opening experience, and it does really show how,
for us country bumpkins from Perth.
Yeah. Well, it also showed how much they'd really closed in a lot of the streets. For me, I could, you know, the roads are so narrow, and it's because they've kind of jammed more lanes in, wiping out small parking areas and making it a lane. It was quite tight. It was quite interesting, but it was good to go back to all these old haunts and all these old places where I used to hang out, even going to boarding school at Summerhill. So I knew that area pretty well. But yeah, so Sydney was, getting out of Sydney was the first challenge. The national park, or the Nasho as I've heard it called, was quite a great drive, a bit of a slower trip. And
but
considering
we still didn't actually know where we were going.
No, we had no idea where we were going to camp. We were just thought, let's head this way.
Yeah.
And one of the plans was to head towards Braidwood. So we only had Braidwood as sort of a target, and trying to work out how we were going to get there. The navigator and the routing plans took us a decent way. You know, we got onto the Princess Highway just near Wollongong, and then we travelled on the highway for a bit. But where did we stay that day? Was that the bridge?
That was that beautiful Endrick River crossing.
Yeah, the Endrick River crossing.
That whole area,
right.
As we came through there, coming down the mountain, it was just spectacular. And we'd seen a few markers on the map as possibilities. There's some lookouts, and there's a lot of state forest, and there was tracks left and right the whole way, and a few waterfalls. But it was getting quite late for us, and we weren't really sure what to expect at any of these places. So we were just driving slowly, and we eventually came to this Endrick River crossing one that was a free camp right down below a bridge. And the whole area had been spectacular. And when we got there, it wasn't the easiest spot to get into, because we wanted to get right on the river crossing. And how it works is that you come in on a dirt track, you go past a big grassy field where I guess if you've got a long van or you just want an easy stop, you can pull over there. But we could see this dirt track continuing on. Oh, the one on the right-hand side when you came in. Anyway, we came in on this dirt track.
Field. It was only a teeny-weeny little bit of dirt.
No.
The road down the hill.
Front. No, further up the front. When you pull in off the main road, up where the bridge was, there's that whole area that originally that's what I thought what the rest area was. And then we saw the track, followed the track around, and there is one tiny little spot for a car, but you couldn't see the river. And then we saw a track going down a rutted hill, only what, 50 meters? And then there's this beautiful causeway. Yeah. So the causeway used to be a road that went across the river, and it's obviously been long gone, washed out. Then you can see some pillars of an old bridge, which I later found out had been built in the early 1800s. And then the modern bridge, which is above that, a big concrete highway, is the spanning bridge. So you do get a little bit of road noise there, not much, and it's pretty much a back road anyway.
But it was a pretty specky campsite. It's been posted on our socials, and so you can check out that. It's Endrick River, Endrick River.
Yep.
And it's on the Braidwood Road. Don't all go there. because it won't be as nice if it's full of
No.
people. But
It
we
rained, remember?
where
That's what
the
made
biggest
that
problem,
so much fun.
the biggest thing for us, you know, because we pulled in there pretty late, the weather was looking a bit dubious, like it was likely to rain. We'd just come out of heaps of rains.
It
We'd
had
seen
been
rains everywhere.
stinking hot,
It was really,
remember?
really
We
hot when we
swam
got
in the
down
river.
there,
Yep.
and just setting up camp, we were sweating. It was so humid. Um, it didn't seem like it was going to. We were wondering how many mozzies and how bad it was going to be. But once we'd set up camp and we'd got it all sorted, we were camped on the causeway, and literally that was only, I don't know, 3 inches above the waterline. Um, and then it started to bucket down with rain. And you know, we're on a river, uh, some way down the river. The river is flowing. It had a reasonable flow already, and it's pouring. And whilst that was wonderful and a great thing, we had no idea how much catchment area
Yeah.
that river had for the rain coming down. We had no idea how much rain we were having, because just in that one spot we were out of service. If we climbed up the hill, we would get service. And so the decision was made. We actually hadn't even turned on our Starlink subscription, because I basically cancelled it while we were in Sydney, because I knew we were going to be there for a bit longer. And so I thought, oh, we better go and double check what the weather's doing. So it was dark. It was like 6 or 7 o'clock, and we thought, I better go and drive up the hill to turn on the satellite, to turn on the Starlink if we wanted it, and also just to pick up the weather service, pick up a weather feed on the BOM app and see where what the rain was really doing. And so we did that. We drove up the hill. It wasn't very far that we had to drive, but we drove up the hill, picked up the weather. It said that the rain was going to stop, so that gave us a little bit of confidence. We drove back down the hill to notice that our camper basically had water running under it. Not a huge amount, but it was running off the sides of the causeway and running basically under the camper. It was not of huge concern, but the river had risen probably an inch. As I said, we were 2 or 3 inches away from the water level. It had risen about an inch, and water was coming across from the hillside down and across the causeway. But we made a judgment call, and we decided that we should be okay. But just to be double safe, one of the things we did do when we bought the car back, and these are things to think about when you're in areas where you're a bit worried, was we actually backed the trailer down so that we backed the car down so that the hitch for the camper was directly lined up. So the camper was already wound up a bit higher than the hitch receiver on the car was, and so we backed the car down so that basically the top of the hitch was sitting right underneath the ball, or in our case the DO35 pin was sitting right underneath the hole. So if we did have a problem, the car was already in the right place to hook up the camper to pull it out of the way. So that was just something that, think about those sorts of things if you're in a possibly dubious situation as to how you're going to get out as quick as possible. So we did that, and then we took some great photos, some great footage. We swam there. It was a wonderful little spot, a nice place to camp if you're in that area. So I suggest you have a look at that.
The risk assessment of that was because as soon as the rain stopped, it literally all drained away, and we were back to the concrete base of the causeway again. And having checked the weather and knew no more weather was coming through, and we could see the way the clouds were coming through, we could see that it wasn't going to be a place that was going to be inundated quickly. It was draining quite well. And
it did pour again in the middle of the night just to keep us on our toes.
We did set up some measuring sticks and things to make sure, okay, if it gets to this point, we're leaving. If it gets to this point, we're done. And, we were completely safe. And in the morning, we were rewarded with the most beautiful mist coming up. And have a look at some of the photos on our Instagram account or our Facebook if you're following, because some of these special places we do share there. And, of course, you can find them all in the app as places.
So after that great camp, we got up and we pulled out, and that was our very first time of packing up a wet camper, because obviously we'd had 3 or 4 spouts of decent rain overnight, and everything was soaking wet, and we'd never, the new Ultimate had never been in the rain. It was its first experience, so it was our first experience packing it up wet. And hoping that it was all going to come out okay at the other end, and we didn't know, and obviously until we set up camp the next night, which was just out of Chiltern or something. Is that
Chiltern.
Chiltern. So after we'd left Endrick River, we did Braidwood, and then we were thinking about how we were going to get across from there, because really we could go down into Victoria and follow the coast road, or most of the navigation plans that we were asking at around about the Braidwood area was taking us back towards Goulburn and then coming down the Hume Highway, which
we didn't want to
we
do.
didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
So we made an executive decision that we'd force the auto routers to go the way that we wanted by driving to Cooma, knowing that Cooma was sort of a stepping point of going either over the Alpine Way or going around at the bottom and still going towards Victoria. There's the main roads going in both of those directions. You can go west or south from there. And so we made the drive down into Cooma. That was fairly. We went through, what was that mountainous area that we went through? Was that Dewar?
Yeah, as we went past the Dewar National Park.
Dewar.
Yeah, that was amazing. There'd been fires through there. Obviously, people who live in over east would know about it, but for us, we'd only heard about your stories, and when we actually saw the extent of damage, it was incredible. So tons and tons of deadwood, made for beautiful photography. So poor David, I kept stopping. Lots of wombats, lots of wildlife, but we knew that you can't go into the campgrounds at the Dewar, otherwise we would have come across actually to the road from there. I wanted to come across from east to west at that point, so we had a look through there. Yeah, and then driving to Cooma.
Dewar was a good drive. It was dirt road.
Yeah, it was gorgeous.
It was very nice. Yeah, we had a good time in there. We saw a lot of the treks, and a lot of the treks that we've got published going off to the left and right and things like that as we're driving through, going, oh, I wish we had time, wish we could, but
seeing places where I only know the name of them and can't visualize it, Numarella and all of that.
Yeah, it was like, where are these places? And now we've got an idea.
Yeah.
And then we headed into Cooma, and what was that? That must have been, was that Saturday? It must have been.
Well, it's the next day. It's day 2.
Saturday.
That has to have been Friday.
Well, they had that big fair on. They had the street fair and a whole lot of other stuff going on in Cooma. They had a big market thing going on in the middle of town, and car show and a whole lot of other stuff. We spent a little bit of time there, grabbed some fuel and groceries, and punched in the auto router and said which way, and it gave us two ways across the Alpine Way, which was one way through Thredbo and the other way through Tumut, and so, or towards Tumut anyway. I don't think we got to Tumut.
No, so we went to Adaminaby, and then we turned up, and then across.
See, I said you were the one with the names.
Yeah, and then across, all the way across to Kuriong. Well, that's a long way, but that was the most spectacular drive. All the mountain ash had been burnt through the fires and was just astounding. And going through these twisty, turny, windy roads.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was a bit hard going on the car, but
the Snowy Mountains Highway up from basically from Adaminaby up into the hills, was fantastic.
That was easy.
Yeah. Kayanda was the little place at the top of the hill where you turn down on this link road. And so we turned onto this link road, which took us, and link road is a road that's only open if it doesn't rain, and only sometimes of the year or something.
It's closed all through the summer ski season because it goes past
Summer ski season? Don't you mean the winter season?
Yeah, they're only open in the summer. So it was perfect timing for us to take that route across the mountains.
Well, it takes you up to Mount Selwyn, so it's obviously not closed from in that bit, but the bit past that. And so we saw things like 3 Mile Dam, and the hills and the ups and the downs, and the Tumut 2 power station and things like that. We saw all of that. There was a few issues for us going through there, and another few lessons learned. I had just replaced the brakes before we left Perth on the Land Cruiser, and I'd been having suspicions or issues with the trailer brakes a little bit. I wasn't able to get the trailer brakes set up 100% exactly the way I like it. And whether that's all just adjustment or playing around. New camper trailer, different brake setup. It's taking a bit of time to get used to. Anyway, we're coming around all these hills, and anyone that's driven up through there, Link Road and all of those roads, it's really bloody hilly, right? And it's steep downhills and decent uphills, and so I'm coming down, a fair bit on the brakes. I'm using engine braking, putting it down into second in the automatic, which does a certain amount, but the car seems to have a rev range that'll take it up to, you know, too fast even in second gear going downhill. And I'm starting to hear this noise as we're going past some of the rock cliffs on the side. You know, you drive past these things and I'd hear this and I had no idea really what it was. I suspected that it was going to be the brakes, and so I was a bit suspicious about that. But you know, going down some of these roads, there's nowhere to pull over. Mind you, there was no traffic. I probably could have just stopped in the middle of the road, but that's just not something I want to do on one of these little tight turny roads with cars that may or may not come at you. So we found a spot to pull over, and wow, the car brakes were smoking hot. They were really hot. The noise was coming from the brakes. I can't exactly recall what part. It stank, yeah. I can't exactly recall what part of it was, but I realised that I didn't have enough trailer brake turned on. The trailer brakes were cold. It like hadn't done anything, and so the car's trying to pull up the camper and the car, and yeah, it just got super hot. So I spent a bit of time dialing in the right brake settings. I found that if I put my particular controller into boost 1, which increases the brake capacity for the same amount of foot pressure, I was able to get braking happening, and that made a huge difference. So again, another lesson learned. It always happens when you're kind of in a bit of a hurry and you're trying to get through somewhere. And as Michelle said, she wanted to stop for photos everywhere, which is great and lovely and all, but when you are on a bit of a timeline, it sort of adds a bit of pressure into your head, and then you start charging down these hills and jumping on the brakes and getting the car all hot and bothered. You know, you've got to start thinking about it. It was really steep. It was a lovely drive. We went through all of that area, and where did we pop out? We popped out at Cancoban. We just missed Cancoban, I think. We zoomed around Cancoban.
Yeah.
And then we headed across to Albury. Did we go into Albury? We did.
No, below Wodonga. So it was the
we went
beginning
along the
of
river.
the Australia Day weekend. So this was the Friday still, you see. And we were a bit nervous about where we were going to get to camp.
Yeah.
Do you remember? And there was so many beautiful camps all through the Snowies there. That's just spectacular. And it's a shame we didn't have the time. There's a lot of nice huts, a lot of walking tracks, and we could see people really enjoying themselves, and the weather was absolutely gorgeous, but we knew we needed to keep travelling on. And I had a plan that if we got down to Albury-Wodonga area, we would be able to find some camps along the riverfront, of course, on Australia Day weekend.
On Australia Day long weekend.
Who else wouldn't want to do that, I wonder?
That's right, it was.
So I'm telling David, yes, just keep going.
The reason why there was
markers.
the show in Cooma was on the Friday was that was the 25th. It was Australia Day.
Australia Day, yeah.
Right. So this is Saturday, the 26th. And yeah, we went past all these great campsites on the Murray, because where we appeared on the Murray, where was that? Was that in Tintildara or whatever it's called? I don't know, whatever it's called. We appeared on the Murray quite low, and we travelled along it for a while.
Here we go.
And yeah, there was a heap of campsites that we went past, but they were all just a little bit time short. You know, it was lunchtime, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It didn't actually, make a huge amount of sense for us to have stopped at that point in time.
Well, come on, tell the truth. It was full of jet skiers and young people.
Oh, some of it was
set up along the river.
Tallangatta and all of that area. It was for those camps. That was the earlier ones were okay. It was time limited. By the time we got further to the 3 and 4 or 4 o'clock time frame, we were around Tallangatta and all of that area. And yeah, those camps were chock-a-block full of jet skiers, water skiers. There was hundreds of people,
and there was music and
all the things that we don't really aspire to. So we continued on, and we basically got into Wodonga. We did go into Wodonga. We went through Wodonga to pick up the highway, to pick up the Hume.
And that's when we realised from there.
We realised we were going to hit the Hume, and we had to do the Hume basically to get to Melbourne the next day, or to Geelong the next day, because the boat was leaving on the Saturday night.
Saturday evening.
The Saturday night. And so this was this was Friday night. We'd come from Cooma all the way to here. And so we decided to try and look for a camp inland along the Hume Highway somewhere away from where all the people are going to go.
There's tons of rest areas marked on the maps. But these rest areas really are just highway rest areas, parking bays, and there used to be camps. Some of the older data that we've got shows them as being camps, but you know the upgrades over the years to these highways has obliterated all that camping, even in some of the little state forest
And all
areas
these
that you could get
facilities are now
to.
tar based, and they've got everything, you know, the toilets and this is and that. Whilst they're great for a roadside stop, they're not so great for camping.
Yeah.
Um, and so,
So we found Chiltern was marked. It was a bit of a
well, it
potluck.
was actually the first free camp marker that we found in the area
Yeah.
after doing a look up at Wodonga and doing camps within the 50 k's of that area, using the nearby search in the place page. We found Tuan Tuan campground, which was just in a little state forest in the Chiltern
Tuon.
Mount
Yeah.
Chiltern
Yeah.
Mount Pilot National
Yeah.
Park. Right, Chiltern Mount Pilot National Park.
Yeah.
It's just a little bit north of Chiltern. Um, we were coming in obviously a bit late. The sun wasn't setting until 8:30 or 9 o'clock, this funny daylight saving time they have over on this side of the country, where the sun never seems to set. And it
Messes up my
it
biorhythms.
messes up all of us because we're not used to it. So we went into Chiltern, and what an awesome little town. I mean, I don't say that word very often because I don't particularly like that word, but it's like a throwback to the 50s, 40s and 50s and stuff. The whole town.
Yeah, we
The
knew
whole
we
town
had
is
to
like
come
a
back
little.
and look at this place, but we had to drive through it. But it was just eye-poppingly gorgeous.
Yeah, it was so
Historic
old school.
buildings,
And
beautiful.
all the current businesses are all working in these really historic little
Yeah.
business places and stuff. It was spectacular. It was
It was
very
a great
special.
find.
You turn onto the cobblestone main street, and there's even like places to tie up your horses and God knows whatever else, you know. So it was a really great place, and we drove through it fairly quick because we were still targeting the national park, which was just north of town. And so we headed up into the national park, and we got a campsite, which was perfect.
Well, there was someone in the designated campground, and it's a really tiny little campground. And honestly, with them there, if we'd camped in there as well, it would have been a little bit, both of us would have lost our sense of privacy. So there's tons of little tracks around, and there was a little bay just across from there. So we decided that it wasn't doing anything wrong to just pop over there.
Yeah.
It's like a junction of some tracks.
Yeah, it was a track junction, and there was a bit of a verge on the side of it, so we just pulled into there.
And we've got a pretty small footprint with this, so nothing goes into the ground other than the wheels. So
the wheels and the three
and we're
little jack stands.
self-contained. So
Anyway, so we decided to pull in there just outside the campground area, and luckily for us, we did, because after we'd set up, about 3 more cars arrived.
At least 3, I think.
Just little cars, you know, with tents and stuff. People just fairly easy camping, and little camper van thing. And you know, so luckily we did camp just up the hill a little bit because we didn't have to deal with all of that happening. Anyway, we had a great camp there. That was quite a nice night. And then we decided we had to go back to Chiltern and have a bit of a tour around town. So we got out and took some photos and walked around and bought some jewelry at the jewelry shop for Michelle. And you know, what a fantastic little place. It's well worth a stop if you're in that area, if you're into historical stuff and sort of a throwback in town, a throwback in time. Not as much as going to, what's that place in Victoria, the old town, Ballarat. It's not like going there, but it was pretty nice. It was a very nice place to go, very low key. And so then from there, you know, it was basically just a tar blast down the Hume Highway.
Yeah, but let's comment on that Hume Highway. We were actually quite nervous about getting into Melbourne and through Melbourne over the other side to Geelong when we were first mapping out this trip, because it's been years since we've come to this part of Australia. And our experience in the past has been you can get really congested, and this Hume Highway, to getting to Geelong, you just plonked in the point that we were going to, using the place for the Spirit of Tasmania terminal as our destination, and we just hit navigate, go, and it was just smooth sailing the whole way through.
Oh yeah, it was amazing. You know, it's been forever since I've driven in the outskirts of Victoria, in the outskirts of Melbourne. You know, where some of these new link roads and these outer hub roads are running around. And yeah, when we came down the highway, and there wasn't that much traffic really, even though it was the Australia Day long weekend. It wasn't the middle of it; it was the Saturday. but then you get down to whatever that crossroad number is. I can't even remember what it is, the M80, and it's like 4 lanes or more in each direction um, of traffic. There was traffic, let me tell you, there was traffic, but nothing was very slow. We didn't get slowed up too much. Those outer ring roads and stuff, they do seem to allow you to get around the edges of Melbourne quite well. So yeah, we charged through there, and we got down to Geelong. I can't remember exactly what time. It was like 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Yeah, it was about 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. We had a couple of hours to kill. We had to be at the boat ramp at 9 o'clock or something, and 9:30 for 11:30 departure, or 10 o'clock for 11:30 departure or something. And we were just able to pull up at a little park down there and watch the people fishing and have a meal out of the back of the car while we waited for the ferry to leave. And
we could actually see the ferry. So for some reason, it doesn't park itself at the terminal before departure. It was over on the other side of the bay. And the locals doing the fishing were telling us how it all worked. And we were able to see when the boat came across, and we got some nice footage of it coming across right in front of us. And then we thought, oh, well, it's time to go now. And there was one other caravaner that parked alongside us and had a chat. He was also going on the same ferry. So we spoke to him.
Yeah.
It was very easy. It was all just smooth sailing.
Yeah, it was all very easy. We went in through the check-in on the boat. It took a little bit of while. There's a bit of marshalling. Obviously, there's a biosecurity check, checking your fruit and veg, and all that sort of stuff. And then a few sit in a queue for a little while, waiting for the commercial loads to go in. All the seemingly hundreds of freight trucks that the trucks don't, because the trucks have dropped off just the trailers all at the wharf, and they use these little shuttle trucks, sort of like what am I thinking of? I don't know, the things that lift. Yeah, forklift, like little forklifts, and they drive all these trailers on. That takes a little bit of time, but then we drove straight in, drove under the little boom thing. It looks like it's too low that you're not going to fit under, and you do fit under. Navigated our way into the boat, and
the guys who guide you in, do you remember?
Oh yeah, they guide you in with like a few millimeters,
on either side.
and might turn the wheel sharp here and then turn it sharp the other way, so that you can get it so that the doors will allow you to open and things like that. They've got it so well sussed. Turn full lock here and you go about 3 inches, and then he says turn full lock the other way and you go about 1.5 inches, and that means that the doors can both open. And the mirrors don't hit anything. And they're pretty good at their job, these guys that park the cars in the boat.
I took some footage. I've made a little clip of the whole process of going onto the ferry and how all that gets done. So that's on our socials too.
Yeah. And so we had a gin, and then we decided to find our recliner lounges, and we proceeded to try to sleep our way to Tasmania. Luckily for us, we were kind of in the back row of the boat. It was A28 and A29 or something, and we were right at the glass, so we could see out the back the whole way. So not that you could see much, because it was pitch black and it was nighttime, but certainly as you were going through the bay and all that sort of stuff, you could see the lights all around the place. It took ages to get through Port Phillip Bay.
Yeah. It was about 2 hours to get out.
To get out into the thing and get through the rip there. Yeah. Which was probably the roughest part, and then across Bass Strait. Yeah. And it was a relatively easy sail. I slept like a log for a few hours, and Michelle didn't. So we each had a different experience there, but we
noise cancelling headphones are perfect.
Noise cancelling headphones are perfect, yes. So I would certainly recommend that you have a set of noise cancelling headphones.
Just because the boat itself was the constant humming, just like on a plane, while you wear them for that. People were really good in the reclining area. There was not a problem at all. I didn't hear a single person even cough, although you remind me that's because I had my noise cancelling.
Yes, you had noise cancelling headphones on.
I've been saying how good it was, but I just couldn't sleep. There was too much light. They leave these little night lights on, and they're right in your eye. And then, of course, I'm looking out the window. I would have preferred to not have the distraction of that, because I was looking at all the lights and wanting to look at the ocean and figure out what I was feeling versus what I was seeing. So they had lights out the back of the boat. I could see the wash the whole time. There was hardly any swell. We actually had a very smooth sailing across, and
Yep.
Yeah, look, the 11:30 departure was not my first choice, but it actually worked out really well because the time that you land in Devonport is all very pleasant. You
All the
have,
businesses are open and all that sort of stuff.
yeah, it's about 9, 10 o'clock or whatever.
10
You have
o'clock, yeah.
breakfast on the boat. You can look out the window. So you can actually get a proper night's sleep. By the time you've put your boat, you've gone through the queue and got onto the boat, you know, that you're ready for sleep. You go straight to bed and wake up. So you're not really missing much in your interruption to sleep, except for like me, I didn't sleep. So
Yeah.
sort of bombed out the next day, but you slept, which was good. You're the driver.
I slept. Yeah. So there we are. We've made it to the Spirit of Tasmania. So our journey of the creation of the EO Topo 2024, which kind of happened sort of by accident, but it was well timed and well positioned, and it's gone out relatively painlessly. That I can say now that we're a couple of weeks past that. Um, but we've given you an update on that. We've talked about how we got to Tasmania. And so, you know, from here, we'll leave you until the next episode where we'll start our journey around Tasmania. So thanks for listening. Make sure you subscribe to our channels. Keep an eye out on all of our socials. Michelle is doing a fair bit of work to make sure that we publish stuff in there every day or every other couple of days. So keep an eye out and look out for things that are going on. And we'll catch you on the next episode.
See ya.